When explained properly, all of these facts make sense, but as they are often not covered in school, many Americans are oblivious to these facts. Here are the top 10 things many Americans don't know about their representative government. Number 10, the Electoral College is not how the founders envisioned it. Everyone just assumes that the wisdom of the founding fathers ensured the blue and red states in the Electoral College was normal. However, for the first 13 years after the signing of the Constitution, there were 3 winner-take-all states, and after the election of George Washington, they revoked that. Some divided up their Electoral College by district and some by county. In the Constitution, states are allowed to choose however they decide to appoint or elect delegates, representatives, and Electoral College members. In fact, the founders intended there to be no political parties. However, the natural creation of political parties through unintended consequences changed all that. In Washington's second term, 11 of the then 14 states actually elected their Electoral College members through the legislature. When Thomas Jefferson lost to John Adams, he angrily wrote the governor and future president, James Monroe. On the subject of an election by the general ticket, or winner-take-all, or by districts, all agree that an election by districts would be best, if it could be general. But while 10 states choose either by their legislature or by general ticket, or winner-take-all, it is folly and worse than folly for the other 6 not to do it. Therefore, they opened up winner-take-all voting, and Massachusetts retaliated by switching from district-based representation to winner-take-all as well. If they weren't all following the same rules, a party would be severely hurt, so they all had to follow suit, and by 1880, all states had to change to winner-take-all. It was referred to as the Devil's Pact by the founders of the early republic. Now there are only 2 that have their Electoral College votes divided up proportionally. However, there is a signature agreement being passed by states that if enough states sign on to reach a particular percentage of Electoral College votes, they will automatically switch to proportional votes all at once. 10 states in the District of Columbia have signed on so far. This would effectively end the president winning without winning the popular vote. Number 9, gerrymandering has been done by both parties, but with new technology, the game has changed drastically. Gerrymandering, named after Massachusetts Governor Elbridge Gerry, is a process by which you divide the population into districts to decide who will represent each district, but you do so to give your party, and usually yourself, an advantage over the other party. This ensures that there is always safe districts, and oftentimes whipping boy districts, that constantly swap when people are mad at government. Both parties do this, ensuring seniority in some districts, while other districts can never gain seniority in Congress. However, since the 2010 redistricting, thanks to new powerful geographic informatics technology, gerrymandering has gotten so bad that while the majority in a state may vote liberal, they send a majority of conservative representatives to Congress. It is estimated that around 16 to 17 representatives nationwide should be Democrat instead of conservative. And this imbalance won't change without state governments swept by the opposition in 2020. At the moment, Democrats are the champions of ending gerrymandering, mostly because it hurts them the worst. Let's hope they remain that way if they do have major victories in 2020. Number 8, math ensures third parties are all but impossible. You see a lot of memes claiming that third parties would win if people just voted for them. However, there is a lot that goes into ensuring that a viable third party in the US will not actually work out long term. With our first-past-the-post system of voting, many don't want to split the ticket based on ideology, so you get one party as a majority in a state who often gets corrupt, but people refuse to vote for the better third party for fear of the other of the 2 parties coming into power. Under our system, you don't vote for someone, you vote against the worst one. This is called Dervinger's Law, and it has held up throughout our entire history. Ranked choice voting, also called instant runoff voting, or approval voting could fix that, but they have to be tackled on a state level. If you want to know how you can start your own group in your state, check out my video in the below bar. Number 7, it is a felony to vote illegally in an election, and it's kind of pointless, so it's rarely done. There's a lot of hype, usually on the Republican side, of illegal voting. It's why they claim to try and push for voter ID laws. Voter ID laws would be 100% fair if someone from the government was to come to you and give you an ID, but many, especially the elderly, are so poor they can't even pay for the bus fare or cab ride to a license branch, that in poor counties can often only be open 1 day a week. If you are very old and poor, especially if you are black, you won't even have a birth certificate, and will have even worse problems just to get a form of ID. As it is a felony to vote illegally, and 1 extra vote is usually statistically insignificant unless there is an exact tie, The payoff from voting twice is not worth the risk of long jail time. Also, in the past elections, the few people who voted illegally mostly voted Republican. Their excuse? They claim they had to vote illegally to offset the liberal voters voting illegally that conservative media scares them with. Number 6, your representative can't ask you questions directly. What's the best way to make you feel like your government doesn't care about you? How about make it impossible for your representative to ask you questions directly? Well, a measure passed by the Carter administration that meant to save the taxpayers' money ensures they can't. This is called the Paperwork Reduction Act. Essentially, your representative cannot send out questionnaires to you as constituents to get feedback on issues that would actually make their job easier, even in the age of digital media where it costs pretty much no money to send out a survey. If they want to do it, they have to use some complicated backdoor methods that takes about 6 months, so they don't violate the act, so most don't even bother. So often, the only feedback they get from their constituents is what their most passionate constituents care about, because they vocally and actively contact them, and the representatives are often oblivious to what the majority care most about. It's also viewed as a minor issue, so it will be a while until the Paperwork Reduction Act gets an upgrade for the digital age. Your representatives like getting reelected, so the more feedback they could get from their constituents, the better for both you and them. Number 5, your representatives actually hate fundraising from rich donors, but are so partisan that they can't be bothered to fix it. Thanks to Citizens United and the concept of free speech is money and the rise of super PACs, to survive in politics you have to spend up to half your time in elected office fundraising on calls to mostly wealthy donors, instead of working on lawmaking and meeting with constituents. They actually all hate doing this. It's grueling and demeaning, especially for junior politicians, but due to partisan divisions, they won't come together to overhaul and fix our political funding policy that could make their own jobs much more fulfilling and enjoyable, and much less soul-sucking. But many are afraid that if they broach the conversation and fail, they will lose a lot of their donor money from their current donors and lose their jobs. While presidents running nationwide can get money from small donors spread out over the entire population, individual representatives can be crushed by super PACs or bigger donations for an opposing party by only trying to raise money from a small population of the people, so a party must pool their resources together and allocate based on where they think they will have the best chance of winning. It's a crappy system, but if one party does it that way, both parties have to or they will lose. Number 4, ignoring state elections could cost you your constitutional rights. In opposition to Citizens United, people were calling on the states to call for and hold a constitutional convention. This act requires 2/3 of the states to call for it, and Wisconsin, a long-held blue state, is now mulling over the idea of adding its signature to a growing red state call for a different constitutional convention backed by the incredibly conservative business group ALEC. Let's just say business and not your freedoms will benefit from this kind of constitutional convention. It would require a 3/4 majority of states to ratify any change to the Constitution, but if enough people ignored their state elections, this could happen. Number 3, state and local elections have more impact on your direct lives than the president. People have this misinformed understanding that because the media covers the president so much, he must have power like a king and has the most control over your life. Thanks to states' rights and the separation of powers, your state has way more power over you than the president, and the president only has around 1/6 the total power over your life. However, he does have the most individual power over the nation of any branch or office, and therefore he gets the most attention and therefore all the blame, even if it's Congress or your state government that's messing up the most. So if you only vote for president or only vote in presidential elections, you're correct. Voting really doesn't change much. Number 2, your representatives only care about your area or demographic based on how many of you vote. Many people either hold the naive view that elected officials represent all the people in their district or state, or cynically believe they don't care about anyone in their area. It's actually somewhere in the middle. They really only care about people in their area that vote, or areas in their district with high voter turnouts. Turning non-voters into voters is statistically a waste of time, so they focus on making voters happy and often ignore the non-voters, making non-voters feel like the government doesn't care about them. They don't. If your street isn't repaired or you don't get a military contract in your area, chances are your area is a low voter area and they don't care. They have to or they will waste resources and lose their jobs. Don't like it? Vote them out. Number 1, your vote impacts who the party runs down the road. Many people don't realize the complex analyses of modern politics and how they decide what platforms and issues to run on what area. They now use geographic informatics data, demographic data, open access voter data, primary party data, and polling data. They crunch them together, and from there they decide what they should run on in the next election. If you don't vote, your information isn't counted, so they won't run on issues you care about. If it never feels like there's a candidate running on what you care about and you don't vote, you're part of the problem. Thank you for watching. All links are in the below bar. I hope you learned something from this video. If you did, like, rate, and subscribe to the channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. Thanks, and have a great day.